All right, welcome to part 15 of the Let's Build for Ruby and Rails Developers series. I'm going to just continue on here. I know it's kind of taking a while just to get a new form set up, but this form is kind of a gigantic one and it has a lot of data and a lot of moving parts. So I want to make it pretty quick and easy for the person authoring a job and paying for a job to just kind of come in, do their thing, get out, and be on their way, So there's 3 steps. We left off last time on the preview step. So, and we're using local storage and a few other things here to kind of save data. So at this point, I've got this like built, but the data itself is more or less just kind of within the browser local storage instead of like in the database. I really don't want to save every new job that comes through unless it's like a valid one or it's been paid for. That would just be tons of records in the database otherwise, so I don't want to deal with that. And then the preview we've got kind of set up. It's nothing fancy, but it does get the look and feel across from end user's perspective. There might be a few things I change as I go, but this is kind of the general look that I wanted to go with. And then everything here will just be basically as it could be seen in the end. It's not like exactly how it'll look, but it's pretty close where I think it'll end up. A few like housekeeping items I want to do is kind of disable these buttons so they don't actually do anything, but still point to where they're going to point to. So maybe we just prevent default with some JavaScript or something like that, and just kind of give that all the links on this preview, basically make them dead so they don't go anywhere, just because it's a preview. The one I want to focus on today is the purchase side. This one's kind of a doozy for the sake of we need to display what you're purchasing, so the job and some details about it, the price it's going to be. So that's all going to be based on like what you configure in the front of the actual job posting. So right now I don't have any like pricing upsells or anything said or displayed. I might add those here. And then we can like upsell the end user to use more than the base cost. Because usually you probably want to say what the cost is going to be pretty, outright. So I might display that in this bottom bar. That might happen probably in this episode, maybe another one coming up. So this might take a while. I just want to kind of warn you that this part integrates Stripe. It also gets some data that is within our form. So we're displaying all these things at once. We're reaching out to the Stripe API to use their new security protocols. It's called a setup intent. And you need this response from server side to be able to basically authorize the payment in that case. So it's a lot of talk, but it's sort of approachable, but we'll see how many tries or failures I try to get through this thing. So enough yakking. I will go ahead and at least get some stuff on the page here that's going to make sense. So I've got our project up. I'm in a part 15 branch in my terminal, which is way over here. So that's it as far as it goes, is what I've done so far. Nothing too crazy. We've got our actual pagination on this page still and a title. So we could just say purchase. So, okay. Now we need some data for that actual content. So why don't we have the order details to start? So let's get some actual like markup going. We could just maybe make this seemingly bigger. Maybe instead of purchase, that's what I'll say. This might be 2 things. So I'm going to think about this as the top will be like a details of your order, and the bottom's going to actually be the payment form. I'm going to just house it all in one place, I think. Note we use creating another step that just makes it all harder to use, I think. We'll use a pretty big font. So then we can refresh. This will kind of, I need to go back and actually render it. I need to run Webpack Dev Server. That's a shorthand for bin Webpack Dev Server. So I'll just go ahead and run that. At the time of this recording, Rails 6.1 just launched too. I have not updated yet, so this app still needs to be. Maybe I'll do that in a future video just to kind of get things updated for what we're going to be using. It's not a huge breaking change or anything, but there are some nice things added for like active storage and whatnot that I might be able to use. So let's do flex wrap items end justify between. I'm kind of building the pricing grid, so to speak. So if you've ever gone on an e-commerce site and you see like the details on the left and the price on the right, that's kind of what I'm thinking about here. Some of this stuff's just arbitrary though. So what I want to do is have like a single job listing. Just kind of say, okay, this is the one thing you're buying. Do that. I should also mention Tailwind CSS got an upgrade too, so I'm gonna have to do that in this video. Not this video, but a video. I actually posted a recent, hopefully not dating this video, but I posted a recent guide on how to update Tailwind with Rails. So it's kind of a somewhat tricky, but not too bad. But check that out if you haven't. Race 600. So this will kind of just say this is going to be like the title of the job, and this will be like the details. So maybe like what do we got in our store? Like years of experience, compensation range, experience. Just say XP like that. We'll come back and make the data like legit when we use Vue a bit more. And then we'll have span. Let's start there. I'm going to start piping data through for this to make more sense. So I will continue. So it's looking something like that. Probably want to deal with that a little bit better. Let's just I'll just do this. I'm trying to like mimic something else. I'm gonna just do this on the fly. So we could say, what do we got? Store dot title. Let's just kind of start from scratch here. I want to keep this. I hate how that formats that, but whatever. Their title. Then I'll just add generic stuff for now. And this will be store.form.job. Recall the object in here it's kind of starting from form.job. So I have to go down that chain, which is annoying to type, but it's not a big deal to me. Okay, and what else do we want to display here? So I'm going to say if the compensation type, so we'll say that. And then we'll want to do a conditional here. So like maybe a div there, say v-if store.form.job.compensation type is, what are the types? I gotta figure that out. Let's see, fields. We've got full-time or contract, so I'll steal those. Full-time. Oops. We'll do something in there. And then you could say like v else whatever in here. So it's only full-time or part-time right now. There could be something that's more, I don't know, hourly or something eventually, but I'm not going to deal with that at the moment. So then we'll just say compensation range if it's full-time. Because that'll be the salary-based figure. And then else we'll just say store.form.job.estimated hours. And then because it's hours, we could say instead of that, we could do everything here. So full-time. I'll undo that because that's just repeating myself for no reason. So we'll have the compensation type one way or another. Then we'll output the range if it's full-time, which we have here, and then the estimated hours if it's not, so it's part-time. And that could be maybe improved, like even if it's part-time, it could just be like a contract or something. So I don't know, that's a little open-ended, but I'm going to leave it alone for now. Then we probably want to put the years of experience, I think would be a good one to have. Scooch this up. Maybe I'll put that further at the top. Oops. All right, let's see what's piping through, if any errors happen here. Job listing, that's the company. Yes is actually for the remote role, and then the contract will be the type. And I don't know what that, 6 years of experience. Okay, so cool. And what's weird is I said, that I did put contract, so full-time or contract. Okay, makes sense. And are there hours? I don't think there are. What does Vue say in the browser? Job form. Actually, it'd be root, right? Yeah, job estimated hours 30 to 60, but I'm not seeing that anywhere. Why not? Estimated hours. Am I spelling it wrong? Yep. Now we can see how that looks. There we go, 30, 60 hours. I feel like I want to change that to be something else before I go too far here. So estimated hours. I don't even think we need this. Because if it's contract, yeah, you'll maybe have some estimated hours, but it might just be full-time. It could be so open-ended. So I think I'm going to remove that. We might have to update the data layer to actually have that one. So instead of full-time, we'll just have this if it's full-time. And let me go back to our form here and say we don't need this component now. Yeah, I want to delete this. It doesn't really make sense after looking at it again. But we need to go back to our form. And that's going to be on our details page. So estimated hours, we can get rid of that. Might need to do an update to that UI, and we're importing it, so we can get rid of it here. And again here. Okay. Yeah, I need to fix this. So if it's full-time, we've got that contract. Yeah, just that. So that works. It's good enough. Okay. Sorry for that. We'll go through and see how this looks now. We've got one listing at Apple. It's remote, contract role, 6 years of experience. So let's deal with how this is looking now. I don't think I need this crazy flexness going on. This whole pagination thing's annoying, but it's okay. So I say if if this equals yes, we could say remote role. We'll just say remote, yeah. So v else will be on site, something like that. Remote role contract. Okay, cool. So maybe for the company name, we can make that look a little better. And the job title, I have that wrong. So form job.title. We'll make this one like more of the larger thing. So text 2XL, font black. And then we'll say that. Years of experience, so we can add that to it. Okay. Remote role, 6 years of experience. Apple, we will say for the company, make that like font bold, something a little bigger. Okay, and maybe to offset that boldness, we can make that like text gray. In fact, I'm going to do that for like a containing div here, just kind of give this all that color. It's not quite. There we go. So I think I'm going to make remote and contract on the same line. So here we can just basically do span, 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 span. These are inline elements, so they're not going to break much, but we probably want some offset, so maybe this one I'll add padding left, like 2 or something. Could also put like a bullet key in between, maybe I'll do that. Yeah, maybe I'll make another span with just that, so we could say and bool. It's kind of a shorthand for the HTML. px1. So on both sides, I'll add a little padding. There we go. Make that quite lighter in color. So text gray 400. And it doesn't look that good. A little higher on that spectrum. Okay. And maybe this all will be kind of the text small, except for the company name, of which I will put just right underneath that. It'll make that not gray anymore, but I think that's okay. It kind of looks okay without it. And this is too big in my opinion, so maybe we'll just go back to the norm here. Cool. Product designer. I'm gonna kind of remove some margin there. Doesn't really matter. Okay. So 6 years of experience. Then we could float to the right of that and have, so div, this will be where the flex takes shape. So we're going to do items in because, well, maybe baseline, and then flex wrap, and justify between. Then I want to wrap all of this with a div that just says like flex 1, so it spans on large screens, flex 1, it'll kind of make up the whole space that is in the flex container. Then on the right, we can add like the price data. So store.form.job.price. So if we go back, we won't see the price because I don't think I've actually added anything for the pricing just yet. But shouldn't it be set? Job base price. Price is undefined. We haven't really done anything to make that like a thing. And then we'll get the shell of the content here. We'll below all that, let's add like another div. This could all be extracted and probably made a component, but I'm trying to just do things pretty scrappy. So we'll say total. And this will be kind of a bigger font, so it stands out and it's bold. So text 2XL, font black. Okay, nothing will really display there, but we'll get it going. So below all that, we'll have just kind of the look and feel finally. And I think it makes sense to maybe do the border. Nah, we can leave it alone for now. Actually, yeah, I want to actually take this outside of that spectrum, so it's just below that, and then that bottom line is buttoned up to it. There we go. Yeah. So these are your items, and then everything there it'll render a price once we have that set up, which I need to work on. And then below here, I'm going to render the form, so payment information. I'm going to stub this out. I don't think I'm going to get to this part in this video, but look for that soon. Because the Stripe implementation is going to take its own dedicated video, I think. So we can figure that part out as we go. Just going to make a container. We're going to add another form. Is just make the div here. I want to say payment information, kind of like our first heading there. And I want to do basically the same style as this for now. And here we'll render basically the Stripe form, which will be its own component. And this is going to bork. I'm going to call it maybe Stripe form. And we'll pass in, we could pass in the job, but I have it stored as a global thing. So one thing I want to do is just kind of say, hey, it's powered by Stripe, because it kind of gives you some security, I think. So text gray. Okay, I'm going to make this component. We'll import it accordingly. So I will do that. Stripe form. And the form will be basically a way to kind of hang on, Stripe form to modularize the Stripe integration. So Stripe form, we need to make the actual form still, or the component, I should say. I'll just do that, I think globally. So then I think I could do a snippet here. How do you do that in VS Code? I forget. Snippet. Yep, there, VBase, cool. I don't know that I need this, but we'll leave it alone. Div that way, give it a label. I want to get the user's card, like their name for the card. With metadata we can pass through. It doesn't need to be part of the Stripe form itself, which is going to render on its own in a iframe that they use. So this is just more or less for me. Because sometimes when you purchase something, maybe it's on your business card, you might want to consider that. And if it's you making a job in this case, but you're using a business card, you can use a different name on the card, depending on who is buying it. So that's just kind of where I'm coming from there. We're going to use kind of our similar local storage thing, I think. Let's see, handle, card input, can pass in the value. And I want to bind this value. This can be a little bit different actually. To job.card name. I think we need to get that set up. So store.form.job. I'm wondering if I should add that on the job or just on the form. Maybe I'll do that on the form. So we could say card name null. And I'll go back to there. And instead of job, I'll just do this. Then we can give it a class. I have an input class. And I'll say placeholder. Okay, so that gives us the name for the card. Now we need the card elements. Okay, here's where Stripe's going to come in. We're going to use Stripe elements here. So I'm going to just say card element, and I'll get to this coming up. Won't make any sense right now, but just kind of what I want to deal with. Then we'll have a button. I'm going to make a div actually that's just text small, text red 400. This will be like card errors if they happen. I want to give some feedback if something isn't right. Then I'm going to add a button here. This might be, should I do this though? This is a full form. Okay, and then we'll add some like effects and stuff coming up that's going to like say loading and whatnot, so we can deal with that. But for now, let's get the Stripe integration kind of going. Docs, so Stripe elements, we'll go there. So basically this gives you like context of what you can use here. I don't even know, am I logged in? So here's the testing data, and I'd still have to activate this account. So you'll have to do that too if you're trying to follow along. But basically I just want some API keys at this point, which is what we need. Then I can also go back to this page and we should probably see an updated one. Yeah. So we need to load Stripe first off. So let's open our app and do that. I will go to application.html, and I don't think that's where I wanted to go. So shared head. Do I have Stripe? Yeah, I'm already loading it, which is fancy. I don't remember doing that, but I'm glad I did. So definitely make sure you have that version 3 added. It's going to basically be very dependent on what we're doing here. But with that added, now we can go and get the Stripe elements stuff set up. So I don't know how secure whatever this is, but if we go and just return data, we're going to do some basic local data here. So we're going to say Stripe, we'll just set to null. We want to initialize it when we load this component. Card, we'll say null. Disable. I want to be able to like disable the button if there's errors. We'll need some data there. Stripe key for cleanliness. This is going to be an easier way to access it. So I might just throw this on the window. Payment config. Stripe key is what I tend to use if I'm doing the JavaScript land. You could put your key right in here or use like a environment variable, which I probably will have to do, don't I? It gets complicated though, so maybe I won't. This is just the public key anyway, so it's fine. Show payment. We'll get to this part, but show payment form. It's going to be If something's happening behind the scenes, I want to kind of just hide the form so you're not trying to mess with it and maybe pay for something twice or something. Okay, so here's some variables we'll make use of. One thing, of course, we need to do is have our methods. And what we're going to do is this first one, the handle card input. So I'll make a method there. And that's going to just pass in the value. And then like we could do the handle payment method. So handle submit. We'll do some junk there. That's going to be really just pushing back to the server. It's that card. We're going to make sure the card's valid. So if not, this dot stripe return. Then we'll say I'm going to end up doing some showing and hiding of stuff, and then we'll say like handle card payment, something like that. I'm going to comment that for now. Cool. So on the mounted area, we need to deal with Stripe, particularly in this component, which isn't something we've done in the other components really. Mounted initializes when the component kind of first loads. You can think of it that way. But you can also do something like before it's destroyed, and it de-initializes, I guess is another term. I'm just trying to find the end of this right here, I think. So mounted picks its own function, if I can type, which we can set up what stripe is going to be. So this stripe will set our data right here to a new instance of stripe. So we could say stripe, and we have access to this thanks to the library loading in the Vue, Rails view. So then we could say this dot stripe key, and then this dot card will initialize. We could say this dot stripe dot elements dot create. And if you've never dealt with Stripe before, this is kind of the common way to pass through Stripe elements. You have to create a new instance of a card that essentially renders an iframe in your view, and then you can do stuff with that. Basically all this to be more secure on the internet with payments. So we're going to say card element. So this is attaching that to that. Now we need to still get our test key in setup. So let me figure out how I really want to do that. I'm trying to think. So I think what I'm going to end up doing, I made this all complicated as fuck, but if we go into our Vue component, this is where we actually mount it based on the component that is a stimulus component in our app. And stimulus kind of points to what will be in the HTML. And what we can do is render our stripe key in our actual application view. So instead of that, we can say, if we go to the head, I want to render our actual stripe key here out just to kind of have it all basically everywhere. It should be pretty straightforward. So we'll set a meta tag here, and I'll just throw it up next to this one. So basic HTML. I'm just going to render our stripe key back, which we don't have yet. I'll have to show you how I'm going to add that. Stripe public key, and content will be, we're going to use application credentials. So for Rails, that looks like rails.application.credentials.dig, and I'll set something in there that's called stripe, and then public key. So that will end up pointing to our app, which is encrypted keys. So anything in this credentials space is encrypted by default. You can have different credential environments. So by default, there's basically the master one, the production one, which would be used when you deploy this somewhere. You can have a development one, or a testing one, even a staging one, depending on how many you want. So I'm going to create a development one for now. We'll have to add the actual live ones. Your Stripe live keys will go in the production one, and your Stripe test keys will go in the development one, if that makes sense. So How you do that is run a fancy command. So Rails credentials edit, and I'm going to pass in environment and then equal sign development. And if this is your first time doing this, it's going to generate a development key in your, let's see, config file. There'll be like an initializer or credentials folder that pops up because there's a default one here. That's the root one that's automatically given to you when you create a new app. This one will bounce up a new folder. If you get this, it's because you don't have a editor defined. I don't know why I don't yet, but you could just pass. In my case, it's going to be VS Code, so I'll just say wait and then run that again. So Rails credentials edit, edit. Then we'll do the same thing, environment equals development. Let's hope this works. Okay, there we go. After way too many attempts. That's the syntax. If you saw right there, you need to run the first Rails credentials edit first is what I found out. I was trying to jump the gun and run the development one first, and I think it needs to initialize or something. I don't know. But that's the line right there. If you're following along, I'll go back to the editor and add our Stripe keys now. Now I'm going to use my test keys. You should get your own Stripe account and use yours if you're following along. And definitely don't steal my shit, please. If I miss something and find it in this video, that would be my bad. But that's dick move from someone out there who might be just being stupid. So paste those in. Get a private key, copy that, and eventually we might need a web hooks token here. I'll get to that part. That's nothing I'm going to deal with right now. Basically, to ensure you receive payment on Stripe, the best way to do it this day and age is through a webhook. And your app can listen for webhooks and then do like app operations on this side of the app to make sure that happens. That's basically really useful for like subscriptions and reoccurring things. For this case, this is kind of a single charge as of right now. I might invoke a recurring thing, but that might be more on the other side of the fence for the application where the employer signs up for something. But that's just all detail right now. Just wanted to mention it. So with that added, we've got our Stripe public key. If you notice the notation of it, I'm digging into the Stripe namespace we indented and then had public key. Let's restart the server real quick just to ensure it's outputting. So I'll go back to my app and I'll just load up the main view of localhost, see if it's outputting in our head. And if it is, we should be good to go in that department. If I can find it. Stripe public key, there it is. So we've got a key coming back. That's all coming from the app from server side. Don't know how really awesome secure that is. I mean, it's a public key, so it's got to be okay for that. But here's our look and feel right now. We don't have pretty much anything to work with, but what I was getting at initially was on that component, we need to come back and grab that key from the head tag. So we need to do a little bit of this basic vanilla JavaScript here to look for that. So let me grab that stuff. I'm going to say we've got our window element already on the instance of window, but we can make a new one, which I called payment config, if you recall. So payment config. Eventually we can pipe back user data. So I might have like a user object here. We'll leave that alone for now, but I just want to add the Stripe key. And we'll say just a generic document.query selector. Meta name equals, we need double quotes, Stripe public key dot content. Okay, so that should hopefully just attach that to our window, which is the default scope in basically JavaScript land. So what I want to see now is just to boot this up. If I go to the console, if I can type window, nothing will really come back, but if we could kind of narrow in on it, you'll see Stripe's got its own thing since we loaded that library. And then I've got payment config here with our test key pulling back that same thing. And that's all because within Vue, I cannot access my Rails encrypted secrets, which is a bummer, but you could probably go through some other loophole and deal with it another way, maybe through environment variables with a node route. I'm used to Rails, so this is how I did it. I don't know. There's probably a gargantuan amount of different ways to deal with that. But with that added, we've set that here. So now if we load up this view, hopefully the component will be telling us that key is, at least in the data Stripe form. There it is. Okay, cool. So now we're all set. That's basically what I wanted to get going. And then you notice the Stripe object here, that's initialized because we passed it the key it's asking for. So this new instance of Stripe, which you saw was on the window element too, we can go through and set up the card now and then just render the elements, create card. And I've got this variable called style here. I'm going to add some basic defaults for that now. So let's go back to just before our export, and we'll just make a style variable. It's set to an object. Here's how you can kind of style a Stripe form. So I'm going to say just some generic stuff, really. Base will be color. I think I just went with a lot of the defaults. 3748. Font family. I'm going to use my font. And font smoothing. I can never spell this. Anti-ale-est. Font size 16 points or pixels. And we can do a placeholder. Will be color 718096. One more, I think. You can set some invalid properties. So comma there. Invalid. So when the error happens, we can set a color to FA755A, and then icon color we can set as well. So icon color will be FA755A. And something's up with my syntax or something. Wow, that would be why. And what else? Invalid. There we go. Sorry about that. That was ridiculous. So there our card form loads. So Stripe is basically saying we're ready to rock and roll. Looks like some errors might be happening. No, we're good. So we go back to this. Cool. So you could type your card and do all the things. It doesn't look much like a form at the moment, but we can make that better. Coming up, what I will do, at least at this point, is after the mounted, we want to kind of de-initialize the Stripe form every time you either leave the step or the component. It'll throw errors otherwise. So we can say if this.card, because you can mount a card several times. This card you can actually unmount. It's part of Stripe API. And then just set this card to null each time you're basically leaving the component or unmounting the component. So we could go And this is basically useful for if you go here, back here, there would normally be maybe an error or something that's saying, hey, I'm trying to mount this, but it won't work because it's already mounted or something like that. So that's something to take into effect. Now the errors are just kind of hard coded. We could say just v-if errors and basically just render if there are any. So nothing's there now. We'll get that. And then we can adjust the styles to kind of match maybe our input, but it might be easier to do that with actual CSS. I'm not sure. Oh, it's okay. Cool. Yay for when things work. Okay, so that gets us Stripe enabled. This in no way makes it ready to roll. We still need to basically render what's called a setup intent, and that's a code that comes back, like a secret that comes back from the server and from Stripe in your app that basically enables this to be valid once you set that up. What I want to do first, maybe to round out this video, is get the price logic set up. And let's do that at this point. So I'm going to say on the initial view, we're going to set the component's price to a specific base price to start. So we could say info on this step. Let's go to this step info. Here we're setting up everything but the price as far as I can see. Now we got here. So stored form job.price equals stored form.price. If we go into our view logic, I want to see what's going on there. Our root instance has got basically nothing to roll with. The base price. So we can maybe start with on created. So let's check our base price is there. Our price is still undefined. We need to do it on first load. So on created, if I go back, see if it changes at all. It does not. So why is that the case? Maybe I will, instead of just like doing that, I'll just set it in the store to start out at that price. So we've got $199 to start. This might just be because of the data that was saved. So maybe I'll have to clear my data. Yeah, let's do that. Sadly, I'll have to type some stuff, but it's not a big deal. So let's get rid of the form for now. The rest can stay. So everything will have to be re-entered, but at this point, if we check out the view, let's see if it actually works. Base price is $199. Okay, so what I'm going to do is at least render some stuff in the pagination. Not that one, form pagination. So right here, yeah, slot. We can set up this to have the pricing, I think. What's going to be the best way to do this? So we're rendering in each view, and it's at the form pagination bit. So we could say potentially the price here. And just to check, so say like v-if. This won't really look great, so there we go. Okay, cool. One thing, I want to render it as currency as well, so there's actually a built-in way to do that in JavaScript land, something like so. Paste something like that in. We'll just set English for now. Sorry, y'all, if it's not yours. Currency USD, I think that's a default based on your location, but then we can pass in this store dot form dot, what am I saying? This dot store dot form dot job dot price, And we could just say if price there, so if formatted price. We'll do the conditional in the view part. Then we can come up here and render this. Something like this. Hopefully that works. Does not. So what's up? So return. There we go. Cool. So that helps us out a lot. Like I won't have to worry so much about currency and where you're located and whatnot, even though you could make this even more dynamic. If you just left out this like English style, it would actually kind of, based on your browser and your location, it would figure it out like what might work best for you. It's probably not perfect, but it would work. So this is a route we could take with this. I'd almost rather this be in the form pagination globally, but maybe we won't worry about it. So just kind of make it primitive for now. It doesn't look how I want it to, but now we'll render it maybe in the same spot for the second step, so the preview. See what it does. Might just throw it in the center for all I know, or not. Oh, I need to add that as a global thing. Maybe I'll say actions dot formatted price and spell it correctly. Jesus. Let's go back. Since I'm sharing that method on our info, we're going to share it across the whole app. So I'm going to grab that back. Get rid of the computed for now. Go back to our actions. Oops, not there. Store, actions. Oh, I just realized I have this globally, so I don't need it to be on the purchases. I don't need it to be there. Okay. Let's fix that in a second. I will go back here. Then we could say actions formatted price, and then on info we'll do that too. Right on. And on the last page, purchase, we'll basically have that there, but we could still render it elsewhere. So right here we could render it just like we normally would be. Right on. I think that's it. Cool. So on the purchase, where am I at here? Where was I doing? Oh, it was a Stripe form, right? Yeah, so I could say, yeah, okay. So I could just say actions and just get rid of this shit. That's so much cleaner. Those are all in the central store. So as an action, I can format those and have those accessible to this. So that should work, I think, for us. So sorry if that was a wreck. So let's see. We're not rendering the price at this point, which makes me wonder why. Do we get any errors? No. Base price. Price is set, but we're not rendering it. So that makes me not sure why. Oh, because I'm not like actually outputting it. So on the info, formatted price, what's it doing? So on, I keep going here. So store.index, formatted price, taking back this dot, okay, this store, instead of this dot store, we just need store. This should work. I don't get why it's not. Formatted price, oh. Typing things correctly would be awesome. Okay, so that's returning. So if we just say, it's returning a string. That's not what I want. How can I do this? Maybe I need to call a function. So on info, Yep, okay. That wasn't clear at first, but let's do that elsewhere now on preview. And purchase. Right on. So there's that. We'll need to do some validation so we can't go forward if these are blank, but I'll get to that. This, I want to kind of make that preview. Maybe we'll just like wait, this, does that make a difference? No. So flex, let's do this then. So div that, let's say class large flex 1. That should push it over. Should. There we go. I'll make this more descriptive. Right now it's not like giving me any relative feedback. So in this case, let's say product designer, just get some data going. It's undefined. Why is it undefined? I think we might not be updating it as we progress. So why is that stuff saving but nothing else is? Because it's not calling the update thing, right? So on our fields, we're doing this actions update form. Okay, so maybe I can do that to this dot store dot form dot job dot price, and that sets it in local storage. The issue is that, like, it's not that I'm not getting the data. I just think that that's what's going on. So when we have that initially set, oh my gosh, guys, cannot spell. Firefox is awful right now. Okay, tell me we've got local storage. We've got a price. Okay, that's all I want. So now I can do stuff. Let's say product designer. But now, as you can see, this was the whole goal. Like, the price is now on our form. We've got the state there. We need to do currency here as well, which we'll figure out. But you can see the line items, the total. We've got Stripe set up. Nothing's actually communicating between server and Stripe yet. I'll do that in the next video. This one's gone pretty long at this point. But we're getting close. So this actual preview step, the purchase step's almost underway. A lot's going to happen here, so I'll try to talk through it. First, we're going to need to validate the credit card. So through Stripe's API, they give you some of that. We'll use Vue to kind of just say if there's an error, we'll prevent default on this button, maybe display an error message. Then once you actually process your payment, I want this all to kind of go away and show like a loading state. And then if anything happens, we can tell, like on the API requests going on, we can re-show this form and maybe the error state coming back. There's a lot of errors that can happen, either on Stripe's end, on my end, on the server end, etc. Now, when we first hit this new job form, I'm going to need to create what's known as a setup intent for Stripe to work. And we'll end up basically passing a new key from Stripe to the Stripe instance when we get to the checkout. That needs to update each time your price changes. So we've got this one set right now as just a default in our view, but you want to actually determine pricing and all those figures from the server. It's more secure, so if something were to happen, you don't want the front end to just maybe someone inspect logs or console and change it, hit purchase, and then they paid $1 for your $40 thing or something. So all that to say, that's still to come. I'm going to do that probably in the next video. It's kind of a bear to deal with because we're doing API requests with Ajax and then waiting and seeing if things happen. Then you got to deal with webhooks on the back end, assuming all is well there. So that's of course for subscriptions. I'm going to start with this payment process off as single charges. So I'm going to make that a little less of a bear to take on at first, but I do want to integrate subscriptions for this coming up where you post a job, it'll basically renew until you cancel it. That's just something I think is the norm these days, but I just didn't deal with or want to deal with at this point. There will be more logic. So that and more in the next one. I will see you guys in it. Thanks for tuning in. If you have so far, we're up to part 15. There should be quite a bit more to come. I'm sorry this form has taken such a long time, but I want to make it kind of a cool experience. So I think we're getting close. After this, I'll probably start taking on more of the, I guess, community side as just something more refresher to look on. Maybe that, or more of just getting the job listings nailed down, getting that smaller MVP live, and then start posting jobs on the live site, and then just start kind of making the app more of an app with the community side of it, and then also the employer side where you can actually search for other, maybe people can create a profile and have that on this site, and you can see their job history and whatnot. So it'd be kind of cool to have all that. That's quite an endeavor to take on, but we'll see how we go. All right, so long.